Hello and welcome to Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel. I'm Gail.
And I'm Michelle.
And today we are going to give a talk on how to look after these lovely little things. And Michelle, can you tell us what they are?
So these guys here are two crested geckos.
Wow. Bit lively, that one.
It is a bit lively, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about them? Sort of what's their lifespan?
So what we have here is we have an adult in here, and then we have a baby here. So this one's not very old at all. This one is literally around a month old at the moment. So lifespan wise, we're now looking in the region between 10 to 15 years for your average crestie.
And what sort of size do they get to?
So Red's a pretty good example of an average size. He's not particularly large, but not particularly big. So including tail, in the region of probably around 8 inches, something like that. Obviously you do get large and small examples.
Oh, there we go. Okay. And what type of food do they eat?
So they would eat a fruit, nectar and insect based diet. So quite a lot of variation. However, we are quite lucky now because we have some really good prepared foods that we can use to help with the fruit and nectar side of the diet. And then it's very low levels of live food as well.
Oh, okay. And how often would you feed them?
So it depends on the size of the animal and also what condition it's in. But a lot of people tend to put food in every other day, that sort of basis for them. Obviously the quantities will vary depending on the mass of the gecko, so obviously we're not going to be putting the same amount of food in for an animal of this size as we would be for an animal this size, because his stomach's probably less than a pea at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So Red will get a lot more food than what he does?
It's slightly larger dish, yeah, for Red.
Okay. And is there a different variety of food?
There's lots of different flavours, there's also different manufacturers, so you will find that some cresties have a preference when it comes to their manufacturer of choice. Some cresties are good all-rounders and will eat lots of different makes and also lots of different flavours. We can manipulate them a little bit by mixing some together to give us a bit more options with their diet type. But yeah, so there's a good variety of products available now.
So as you can see, these guys are quite friendly and you can handle them. But Michelle, can you tell us how often we can handle?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the gecko. Some geckos are more tolerant to being handled than others. If you start off young with them, as we are with this one here, they'll get used to it, and repetition is a good thing. We don't want to over handle though, because obviously that can be stressful for some younger animals. So a lot of people tend to handle about every other day, maybe with a juvenile once a day, just to get used to that repetition of being handled. But yeah, it's really important that we don't overdo it with cresties, and we do need to take care of them, because if these guys lose their tails, which can happen if we were to catch the tail as they were jumping, or trap the tail would come away and it wouldn't regenerate with these guys.
Oh right, okay. So how long can we hold these geckos for?
So it will vary depending on the individual gecko. So some of them can be handled for over 20 minutes quite comfortably. Some of them it'll be a lot less than that, especially as we're getting them used to being handled. We'll build it up, so we'll start off with a small period of time, possibly still in the enclosure, just running them through our hands. And then as they get used to being handled, we can extend the period of time that we're handling them for.
Okay, so I guess Red's quite used to being handled quite a bit.
Yeah, Red is super tame and he's really used to it, so you can see he's moving around quite freely. This little one's still not quite as used to it because obviously the age difference, so he's still a bit more cautious with moving around and how he's interacting.
Yeah, Red's sort of jumping all over the place, quite a happy little chappy. So as we said, there's only a certain amount of time that you can handle, and this little one's been out for a while now, so we're just going to pop him back. So what type of enclosure would you hold this guy in?
So we would normally use an arboreal setup for these types of species. They obviously spend a lot of time in the canopy and hardly any time on the floor of the enclosure. So we're looking for an enclosure with a lot of height in it where we can put lots of foliage so they can position themselves in that foliage. And what they'll actually do is they'll rest in the foliage during the day. They don't have eyelids, so the eye won't be closed during the day. But what they will do is they'll go into a rest mode where they're not really active and they're just obviously regaining their strength, ready for their activities in the evening.
Oh, I see. And what type of light and heating do we provide?
So back in the day when I started keeping reptiles, we never used to put UV onto these setups. We always used to keep crested geckos, as we would a lot of other geckos, where we would just have them as a visual light or no lighting at all. A lot of research has been put into this section with cresties, and evidence does now prove that UV is really beneficial to them. It helps with their bone density, helps prevent medical problems in the long run. You get a lot better colour off of them as well when you've got them under UV, and they generally thrive and feed a lot better than when they don't have UV. So we always recommend UV with this species. And temperature wise, they're not the highest parameter species when it comes to temperature. So because they're from New Caledonia, it's a slightly cooler area than some of the habitats that some other species of gecko are found within. So we're looking to try and maintain a temperature in the region of about 25 degrees during the day. Some people will keep them a little bit hotter than that. There's always variation between owners and the temperatures that they keep their animals at. So we would, in the UK, provide an additional heat source for most of the year. We'd have it regulated, and that way you can have it running all the time, and it'll just catch the background temperature, prevent it from dropping too cool, and it'll keep your animal in a lot better condition for you.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Red. What sort of substrate do we provide for them?
So it's becoming really popular. You're right there, is he?
Yeah, he's just trying to snuggle in.
So it's really popular with these species now to use bioactive setups. And so the sort of substrates that we're using, we can incorporate with these other live invertebrates which are consuming the waste element within the enclosure. So we use things like cocoa fibre, orchid bark, some people will mix. There's loads of products which are now designed ready for use with cresties. So ProRep produce a product called Cresty Life, which is ready to rock and roll. You chuck it in the enclosure. You can put all your bioactive animals in there as well in regards to your inverts, and it means that you can set up a mini ecosystem. We'll look at bioactive in more detail in one of the other videos that we've got coming up, but it is a popular method. But that being said, you can just keep them on some cocoa fibre. There's no real right or wrong with substrate. A lot of it is down to the owner's preference and what the animal prefers to get on with as well.
Okay. And what about water?
So these guys don't tend to go down onto the floor much. So if you do have a water bowl, it's generally for evaporation and to help with your humidity level. Obviously you don't need a massive water bowl if you're using one. Most people just tend to use a smaller one. These guys mostly obtain hydration through licking water droplets. So we'd spray the enclosure. Now, depending on the size of the enclosure, that will affect how often and how much you spray. But they do need to be misted at least once a day. And in the UK, through the warmer months, we'll probably be looking at twice a day to ensure that they have got enough options to drink.
Okay, lovely.
He's weed on you.
He just weed on me, yes.
That's lovely, isn't it?
So is there anything else that we might need in the enclosure? Any plants or hides?
Yeah, so again, going back to the bioactive setup, we can use live plants, depending on their conditions and things like that. Again, it's just matching the plant to the environment that we're keeping the cresty in. Alternatively, we can use artificial, or we can use a mixture of the two if we want to. So it's really down to you and your level of interest in live planting, because obviously we have to work quite hard to keep those alive as well as the actual animal. It's not just a case of bunging them in and they'll thrive. Not all plants will do that. So, if you're not that concerned about it, or if you're renowned for not getting on with plants, it's not a problem. You can go down the artificial route. And yeah, it's a case of making it look like a jungle environment for them. As long as you've got that, it's really as far as your imagination will take you.
Great. Is there any other information that you'd like to provide about the crested gecko?
So cresties are a crepuscular species, and that does mean that they will primarily be active dawn and dusk periods of the day. So they're not fully nocturnal, although I've definitely been in my reptile room and seen them bumbling around in the depths of the night. And they can be quite noisy when they do that. It's not too bad, but you will be aware of it, let's say that. But with crepuscular species, they do rest for the bulk of the day. So with some individuals, that's great, because most people are at work during the day, so it makes them a really good pet because they're active when people are in the home environment.
Correct. Thank you for watching Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel.
Don't forget to subscribe and we look forward to seeing you next week for another video. Bye!
Bye!